Roll call, Julie, please.
Ms. Bradford. Mr.
Here.
Chantuli,
Here.
Dr. Forger,
Present.
Mr. Hyman. Mrs. Khanna?
Here.
Mrs. Stanley? Mrs. Young?
Present.
Mrs. Penna?
Present. Okay. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Berkeley Heights Board of Education was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. On January 6, 2023, notice of the Board of Education meeting schedule was sent to the Star Ledger in the Courier News and was also provided to all schools, PTO presidents, the BHEA president, and posted at the administration building. A copy was also provided to the public library and filled with the municipal clerk. Can we please stand for the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Wiley, you want to go ahead with your superintendent's report?
Absolutely. So our superintendent's report today is board training, and we are very excited to bring in Patty Rees from New Jersey School Boards Association to talk to us about the roles and responsibilities of board members. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Patty.
Thank you for having me here tonight, and this is exciting you're starting off the new year with some training. I'm just going to, if my throat gives out, I have a few lozenges, so I'll just put them down there.
Do you need a water?
I'm sorry?
Do you need a water?
No, I don't know. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. It's been a while since I've been in front of a live stream for a board. But before I start, I just wanted to introduce myself. As you say, I'm Patty Rees. I'm from New Jersey School Boards Association. I've been with the association for about 7.5 years. Before that, I served on my local school board for 12 years in Somerset County. And I also served one term on my town council. So I bring lots of experience here. I gave each of you a packet that includes the PowerPoint presentation, as well as some background reading, as well as some background reading on, the different roles and responsibilities of board members. Right, if you're ready, we'll begin. And I'm used to walking around, so we'll go from there. The agenda for tonight is we're going to discuss board member roles and responsibilities that hopefully will lead to effective board meetings. So this picture actually is a good way to illustrate the high level viewpoint that that a board should be assuming as they're managing managing things. They are not the participants on the dance floor, but rather making sure that there's sufficient space, music, etc., whatever it takes to make for a successful dance. That's what the Board of Education does. They look from above and work with the administration to ensure that tools are there to have a successful district. There are 4 main functions of a Board of Education. They are policy, planning, appraisal, and communication. The board provides guidance through policy development. They set clear expectations for success that includes a guiding mission, vision, as well as long and short-term goals. They also provide for the effective management of the district by employing and evaluating the superintendent. And always they provide for two-way communication between the public and the community, and the public and the district back to the community. So who does what in public school governance? The board members are state officials empowered by state law to govern public schools at the local level. So to your community, the board represents Trenton, that being the legislature, the DOE, and other functions out of Trenton. You also represent your entire community, so that you really should listen to all your citizens and then have a method of explaining the needs of the district as a whole to your community. And at the end of that, you always represent all your students, and all practices and policies should be based on what is for the best for the education of your students. And if anybody has any questions anywhere along the line, you feel free to jump in. So this graphic just shows you, the difference between what a board does and what a superintendent does. Down in a nutshell, a board determines the what. The what being the vision or the mission or the goals of the district that lead to the end results, which is educating your students. The superintendent, however, determines the how. How will the staff and the district achieve those goals? What are the objectives? What are the action plans to achieve the goals that the board sets? So again, the board determines the what of the district, and the superintendent is the how. So now we get into some of the nitty gritty. Board members are policymakers. The policies that the board sets provides the superintendent with direction and a basis for decision making. Well-crafted policies minimize ambiguity between the board and the superintendent. As visionaries or goal setters, the board sets the standard for a program of quality instruction and ensures that there is a budget support for those standards, and provide as well as providing for professional development. And again, always two-way communication. You inform the public and promote public participation in the schools, and work to secure public support for the schools and district goals. And we jump over to the superintendent's role. As chief advisor to the board, the superintendent is a consultant by providing background information about alternatives and also providing recommendations. The superintendent is a staff liaison to the board, and they keep the board briefed on district operations and actions that may require board attention. As executive officer, the superintendent actually runs the district. They administer the policies, and they also provide to the board and the community progress updates, including emergent issues. They direct the staff members through personnel action, delegation, and supervisory activities. And at the end, they're accountable to the board for how well the district is run. As an educational leader, you would like your superintendent to remain active in professional organizations and remain familiar and current with current ideas in education. And then any of those current ideas in education, to bring to the attention of the board and the community. And so another way to look at this is that the superintendent is the implementer in chief in the district. They implement all the policies and practices and goals of the school board. A recipe for success for a good district is a good working relationship between the superintendent and the board. So on this screen, we're going to go pull up a few different bubbles, and if anybody would like to jump in and just let me know what they think. Is it a board responsibility or is it a superintendent responsibility? So who administers the contract? Mm-hmm. The superintendent administers the contract. You're correct. Who establishes and adopts policy? The board. I'm just going to repeat just so the people at home can hear what you're saying, and you're all correct so far. Approve the strategic plan. The board, exactly. Approve curricular materials. Well, it's done. The board approves the materials upon the recommendation of the superintendent. Who evaluates the superintendent? The board. Yeah, that's kind of a gimme. Let me see if you're paying attention. Yeah, and who recommends and implements policy?
That's a superintendent.
The superintendent, yes, the superintendent. I mean, they recommend and implement policy. The board needs to approve the policy. So they recommend to the board approves, should they choose that way, and then the superintendent implements. And who oversees the instructional programs?
Superintendent.
Superintendent. Last one. Who oversees the district leadership? The district leadership.
Superintendent.
Superintendent. Superintendent. You guys did, you did pretty good. So to be most effective, the board as the governing body and community representative, and the superintendent as the chief administrative officer and educational leader need to work together to advance student achievement. That is really the best working relationship. So to make that work, there should be no surprises from the board to the superintendent or the superintendent to the board. And then we talk about the chain of command, which is an important part of this whole process. Do not break the chain of command. The chain of command is generally from teacher to principal to superintendent to board. The board should be the final arbiter on issues unresolved at other steps in the chain. And we'll get a little more into the chain of command in a little bit. And then board members, and keep in mind that board members have no legal status other than that of any citizen, except when sitting with a quorum of the board in a legally constituted meeting. And that is what's set forth in the Open Public Meetings Act. So you just, as long as you have whatever your quorum is, that's when you can take action. As individuals, board members cannot make decisions for the board. They cannot take action for the board, and they cannot speak for the board unless the board has authorized them to do so. And I would just check your policy manual to see what that process is. As individuals, board members also cannot direct any staff member, administrator, or direct the superintendent. So this graphic just shows, keep in mind that one of the essential board skills is knowing what your quorum is. If your quorum is 5, then that's what you need to implement, vote on, and implement any action. So as I said before, board members only have power when they act with a majority of the board. But the real power of the board is finding the common ground on behalf of the whole community. Common ground can only, you can only achieve common ground when all your voices are listened to, not just the majority. You need to listen to all your citizens and even your majority and minority members of your board. Once you do that, once you listen to everybody, then you can act with then it's a valuable process. So on this slide, we talk about the code of ethics, which when I went back through your agendas, I saw that you did discuss this at your reorg meeting. So I'm not sure it's necessary other than to point out that a lot of your roles and responsibilities have been delineated in the School Ethics Act, which is identified here. And there's also a handout in your packet. But I didn't think that since you had just done it, not about a month ago, that we needed to go through that again, unless you think differently. So communication is another one of the four functions of a board. And you are representatives to your local community, but you're also school ambassadors to your community and representatives from your community into your school. So board members have a responsibility to listen to all citizens and to explain the needs of the district, of the school system as a whole. And then just a few questions that have come up in other ways that we include in this PowerPoint. If you have children in this school, how can you talk to their teachers now that you are on the school board? Anybody?
Same way, through
The same
chain
way,
of command.
right? Essentially the same way. You're a parent first, and always, and a board member second. So that if you have to talk to your child's teacher, you have that right to do so. Just follow the same process that any parent does when they want to speak with their teacher, and just let them know that you're there as your child's parent and not as a board member. But again, it's the same process for any other parent. Don't ask for or expect special privileges because you're a board member. But that's not usually, I had three children that when I went through school, one with an IEP, and if you're pretty straightforward that you're there for your child, teachers understand that, they're there for your child as well. The other question we have is how do you respond to parents calling or emailing about district staff for other concerns? At this point, at this juncture, it's like, remember the chain of command, refer them back to the principal. You really want to stay out of any personnel issues as much as possible. You as a board hire only one employee, and that is the superintendent. So when an upset parent, I'm
Tom
sorry,
has a question.
Did you answer, is it
Mike,
okay to visit the schools?
I'm sorry.
Did you answer the question, is it okay to
I-
visit the schools?
Is it okay to
Is it okay to visit the schools?
Is it okay? I think that's something as a board member or as a parent. I think as a board member, it needs to be, you need to talk with your superintendent or see whatever, if it's a committee that's going to look at facilities. I think the key is you just don't show up unannounced without the superintendent knowing that you're there, because it does put staff in an awkward position, and you really don't want to do that.
And as a parent?
And as a parent, well, as a parent, you're same as I think, unless your superintendent feels differently. I feel, as a parent, if you're going to a school concert or whatever, as a parent, then that's why you're there. Also keep in mind that as a single board member without a majority, you really have no authority. But not everybody understands that, and that's if you're going as a function of the board, whether it's to review facilities or something, it does put staff in an awkward position, and you really don't want to put them in an uncomfortable position. So when an upset parent or staff member approaches you, do not resolve the problem. Listen to them, empathize with them, and thank them for sharing, then advise them to the chain of command. And then once you've done that, contact the superintendent and let them know that you've that this issue arose and that you sent the whoever it was through whatever the chain of command is, knowing that there's a different chain of command for staff than there are for parents. As I said, we were going to go back, go through the chain of command a little later. So really just understand what the chain of command is. It really is a place to allow an issue to be handled in the most efficient manner, closest to the source of whatever the source of the issue or complaint. And then just know, as a board member, know what the chain of command is for issues brought to your attention by parents and community members and by staff or administrators, because as I said, they are somewhat different. They can be somewhat different. I'm not familiar with what's here. And again, if you talk to somebody and you refer them to the chain of command, just let your superintendent know that you've done that, so they're aware of the issue. We do lots of slides on chain of command. And this really just says everything that I've already said. When you're advised of an issue, you refer the person back to the lowest level in the chain of command, and then you notify the superintendent that you've done that. And we like to put out a few communication tips for board members. By policy, the superintendent is the spokesperson for the district, and the board president, again, by policy, is a spokesperson for the board. So as a board member, just know and use whatever your board's communication protocols are. And remember that emailed information should be one-way information. If you have a question about the email, it really is better to just call the person directly, and never ever hit reply all. And we'll get into what that means in a minute. Use a district email address for all board communication. If you forward your district email to your personal account or use a personal account, your personal account can be opened. And you don't really want that. I mean, somebody else going through all your personal emails to see if there's anything related to whatever the Oprah request was related to. We also advise that you be very careful when posting to social media, and strongly recommend that you not have a board member social media account, or that you not belong to any private groups on social media. Use a disclaimer on all your social media, and the next slide, the SEC, the School Ethics Commission, has recommended a specific disclaimer to use, but keep in mind that new ethics rulings have ruled that despite using the disclaimer, board members have been found in violation of the School Ethics Act due to the content. So here is the SEC's recommended disclaimer. The following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not in my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the board or its individual members, and solely represent my own personal opinions. So any social media that you use or emails that you send out, anything really should have that. But it's also with the SEC, not a get out of jail free card. Even if you use the disclaimer, if the substance of what the post is that the SEC will look at the substance of what is written to determine that if the disclaimer really is meaningless. And there's been some recent cases where they have said that the tone, what was said in the social media really was, I forget what the word was, but more inflammatory and derogatory. And so they will, even with the disclaimer, they do look at the content of what is written if there is a complaint.
I don't necessarily see it addressed here. What should we do, or what's best practices if you're a board member in terms of signing any petition online, whether that's change.org or through private organizations, particularly as it reflects items within the school, perhaps curriculum. Let's say, I don't want anyone to discontinue Spanish. What, can I sign a petition to not discontinue Spanish?
Honestly, I would stay away from that if it's related to your school district. If it's related on a state level, I would just give it due consideration. But remember, if you sign a petition for your school district, you're the final arbiter. So people, no matter what, members of the public, even when you're by yourself, that if they know you're a member of the Board of Education, they think, and they may not be wrong, that you have additional information, you've had other discussions, so your opinion may carry a different weight, even if you're like one person, not a majority. So I would carefully consider if you sign a petition, especially if it's something educationally within your district. So above all, board members are responsible to and for all the students in their schools, not just some, not just your kids' class, but everybody. Every policy a board approves and every action the board takes needs to be based on what is best for the education of all the students in your district. And you guys didn't have too many questions along the line. So if anybody have any questions now? And we can go into, in your packet.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Reese?
No, that's fine. It's a lot of information at one time.
Can we go back to, I think it's page 4 on my sheet. So maybe it's, I don't know what number. Board members are visionaries and goal setters.
Page. This page 4?
Slide
Well,
seven.
it's-
Slide 7.
I don't know.
Seven.
Oh, yes,
Slide
slide 7.
seven.
I didn't see that. Okay.
Slide
So
7.
it says set standards for a program of quality instruction, but I thought the standards
Goals, standards.
standards come from the State Board of Ed.
I'm
So
sorry?
what's, okay, when it says set standards for a program of quality instruction, we get standards, New Jersey state standards, by area, math, science, whatever, English.
Right, you're looking at
So
local
are these the same
standards.
standards? How could this be?
Well, it's, I guess it's the wording. You're looking at the state standards or the state standards, and you have an obligation toward those. But locally, you can set goals and standards that exceed the state standards or are different than. They can't be less than the state standards. And so those are the standards. So it's really a standard / goals, whatever your district goals are, that the board helps set every year.
Well, if I wanted to go beyond the state standards, say in mathematics, I could do that then.
If you wanted to, I'm sorry.
Go beyond the state standards in mathematics, add to them. Is that what you're talking about here?
No, I think what's confusing is it really should be set goals for as opposed to standards. So to delineate that from what the state has. This is all referred to local school district level stuff, not what is. Like quality, I mean, some districts have a goal of increasing participation in certain course structure courses, or increasing participation in extracurricular or co-curricular activities, those kinds of goals, something that is specific to your district. that is different than the state standards, which you must do, but is more for your students here.
So our goals are based on our strategic plan. So we pull them from there. This board does not currently have board goals.
Okay.
And I know Dipti had brought that up at one point about having board goals, but we as a district have district goals that we pull from our strategic plan, which is going to be up, I think, at the end of next year, I think. Okay. All right.
But it says, so now you're saying set goals for program of quality instruction. So that sounds to me a little different than goals for participation in courses. This has to do with the quality of the instruction. Do we have such goals here?
I mean, the participation in co-curricular, extracurricular could be quality of instruction, because that does, the different programs do bring different students in. But that, again, is what you set at your local level, at your district level.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
So I had a couple questions. So we have, we have policy that guides us, but what happens if we don't follow that policy, right? Because there's the code of ethics, but sometimes if you didn't follow policy, it doesn't necessarily break the code of ethics. Like what holds you accountable to the policy?
I'm sorry, say it again. What goals are?
So like if in policy, there are certain things, right, that says, as a board member, you should not be doing this or that, but you break it, but by breaking it, you don't break a code of ethics. What holds you accountable to that actual policy? Like, how do we hold people accountable to the policies we actually put?
I think if it's a policy of board action,
Yeah.
which is, I think your fellow board members hold you accountable.
Yeah.
And then
Like how? Yeah, like literally, what do we do?
What are the consequences?
Well,
What do we do as a
if you
board?
break your own policy,
If a board member
breaks
breaks
a
a
policy,
policy,
breaks a board
bylaw.
a board bylaw, it's really up for the board to police their own. Those bylaws are yours. That's that they're set to determine how the board governs itself.
Some of our bylaws state that if that happens, the president will sit down with the board member and possibly the board council
Mhm.
and have a discussion. They're not all like that, but that's one of them, perhaps
Right.
because it doesn't necessarily rise to the level of being an ethics violation, but it's still a violation of a policy.
Right.
So some of them
Right.
have that. Yeah.
Right. So there is for some of them, a mechanism in your bylaws for that. I haven't read your bylaws, so I really
Yeah.
don't know what's in them.
Okay.
Anybody else? Dipti?
Does the NJSBA have a framework for when boards set goals for themselves in terms of tracking it or just any kind of guidance?
We do have a process for the board setting goals. And in the back of your, one of the last sheets in the packet is a list of all the programs or trainings that we provide to that. But setting board goals is one, and they almost flow from the district goals. They really are almost a symbiotic relationship. And you said your strategic plan is up next year. That doesn't mean you can't set board goals for the next school year. And we can certainly help you with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No?
Okay.
I have another one. So is a good place to do like something like board goals, a good place to have like a governance committee? Because I feel like we've talked about having a governance committee a couple of times and we're still not sure what we're doing, but right, all of our committees are based on the school, right? How to make the school better. And we work in a committee system, but the governance would really be focused on the board, right? Like on how to make us work more efficiently and productively. Is that a good place for something like board goals, or is that to do more in a workshop?
I think, well, I mean, usually the setting of board goals should be the whole board, the full
Yeah.
board, not a committee, although it can be done in committee. But it really, the recipe for success toward those board goals would be that they are discussed by the full board.
So would you do something like that at a workshop?
We could,
Yeah.
Okay. For sure.
Would that be something that needs to be public session?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
How would, if a board has a class size policy, how would they go about enforcing that?
I'm sorry, what?
If the board has a class size policy,
Class size policy?
how would they go about enforcing that?
That if there's a class size policy, so that would not be in the bylaws, that would be in your policy manual. And you would have to work with the superintendent. That comes under running the schools, and that is what your superintendent does.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Well, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Comments from the public session. During this, can you hear me? During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on any item. The board requests that individuals state their name and town of residence or school of attendance for the record. All comments should be directed to the board president, and depending upon the nature and the complexity of the question, it may or may not be answered during the meeting by the administration. If so, the response would occur after this public portion of the meeting has concluded. Although the board may not respond to all items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. The board asks that the members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility, nor will it be liable for any comments made by members of the public. Please note if any member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. So does anybody want to come up and address the board on any topics? Please do so now. If you can state your name and address, please. Thank you.
Hi, Natasha Jolly at 60 Orion Road. And I'm just going to read to you all an email that I sent to the board earlier on January 26th. So, but you're likely aware of an existing settlement agreement regarding nepotism ethics complaint filed against the administration. If you recall, this goes back to the BoE meeting of June 24, 2021, where Dr. Varley stated, I did reach out to our attorney and he gave me the advice that if temporary, that this is fine, a temporary minimum wage position is perfectly acceptable. An ethics complaint was filed on August 18th, 2021. And in February of 22, Dr. Varley responded to the charges denying that the hiring of her child for a summer internship position violated rules, and that she consulted the board counsel in an abundance of caution decided to remove her child from the position. On November 29th of 2022, the superintendent signed an affidavit as part of a settlement acknowledging the violation of NJSA 18A 12-24B. In the affidavit, Dr. Varley states that she did not consult the policy before the hiring and only reached out to counsel after a community member raised this at a board meeting. Many might say, why is this a big deal? It was only $260 earned before a daughter was removed from the position, and it was only a minimum wage job. But here's what's important. This is another example of taking shortcuts and then doubling down on the mistakes. Did Dr. Varley, lie about consulting the attorney prior to hiring her daughter? Or did she receive bad legal advice? So who's responsible for the legal fees that accumulated over a year? And since this clearly violated policy, why did council continue to pursue a defense in this matter? Was it really for the benefit of Berkeley Heights or for the benefit of one individual? This is another example of questionable legal advice. Remember, council allowed the board to initiate ethics charges on behalf of a member, which the SEC agreed was improper. And more recently, council suggested a vote can be had on a new position, which Dr. Forger pointed out was not approved by the board and therefore would violate the BOE's own policies. I think this should be very concerning, given to the BOE members, given that you're part of this community. And just, is this the leadership you want representing Berkeley Heights? Is this the type of leadership you want to support? And you guys have the power to hold the administration accountable, and it is your responsibility. With respect to the board attorney, what are the rules surrounding the attorney's attendance at the public meeting? I think council is there to advise the board on legal matters. The outburst by the attorney at the Jan 17th meeting was ridiculous. The board may not like what the public is saying, but it is not the place of the board attorney to address the public as if council is a board member, not to mention in the rude manner in which the attorney addressed the speaker. Finally, with respect to the 3-minute rule, by extending the allotted time to 5 minutes, you would gain so much goodwill with the public.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Please state your name and address.
Shauna Williams, Berkeley Heights. I would like to pick up a point from Natasha's letter. That is our board attorney's role in our district and the board's use of the attorney. Our policy 0174 states in part, the designated contact persons shall ensure that contracted legal counsel is not contacted unnecessarily for management decisions or readily available information contained in district materials such as board policies, administrative regulations, or guidance available through professional source materials. Okay, attention needs to be paid to these policies. And given that the board has spent hours upon hours updating them and discussing them, it would be of great benefit if these policies were the primary source of advice and not our attorneys. There are now at least 2 lawsuits against the district, maybe more, and there are 4 ethics complaints that have been filed by residents in the past year. All 4 of those complaints have now been deemed by the School Ethics Commission to have merit, and all 4 are now before the Office of Administrative Law to be heard by a judge. Okay. In 3 of these 4 cases, this all could have been avoided. It could have been stopped before it ever started if the board's legal counsel had given good advice. Instead, they took advantage of hostilities between board members, and subsequently, they are lining their pockets with our taxpayer dollars while continuing to provide bad advice time and again, as we saw last month with the school records custodian. Given that we are now locked into service with this firm for another year, I'm asking the board to consider looking to our new town council president of an example of what leadership and putting our town first looks like. Everyone makes mistakes. It is a strong person who can both admit to those mistakes and rectify them. It's within your power to end many of these complaints and their associated costs. Will you do so? We need to stop treating the board attorneys like favored employees of the district. The superintendent should not hold the threat of attorney fees over the board's head as a punishment should the board not vote for her recommendations. This is not hyperbole, okay? When shown that the school records custodian position would violate policy, the superintendent said, and this is a direct quote, "I will say that that just means it's all going to the attorneys." So we're looking at, we can revise the policy, but we're looking at quite the hefty fees for attorneys. Okay, you guys are responsible to the taxpayers. We are shareholders. We have already increased staffing for the business office. Any further requests should be subject to a comprehensive and transparent review of the situation. I'm asking that the board not approve this expense without that review. You just adopted a resolution, many of parts of which talked about parental input and communication. Please show the people of this town that you understand those rules, that you read the resolution, and that you will apply that. Show that these are more than words on a piece of paper. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board?
Hi, Sai Bhargavi Akiri. My first question is in regards to the preliminary budget. I believe this question was asked earlier this year. When will the public get to see the preliminary budget? Second question is a follow-up to Natasha's statement. Now that the district and the entire town has seen the settlement offer of Dr. Worley that was submitted to the DOE, my basic question is, how can the superintendent certify to something that's totally different from a statement that was stated at this very board meeting on June 24th, 2021? How are we going to make her accountable for misstatements? We know that the superintendent is entitled to legal defense, but when that legal defense is provided by the board attorney, whose interest is the board attorney representing? Is he representing the interests of the district, the Board of Ed, or of the superintendent? If the superintendent, if this year-long, or I think this defense started in August 2021, we are in February 2023. If this was going to end with a settlement offer, why are the taxpayers on the hook for it? How is this sound legal advice from the board attorney that we'll provide the defense for over a year and end it with a settlement offer, which is totally different from the superintendent's statements in 2021? Also, I think the board owes the residents a number on how much the district spent in Dr. Worley's defense till date from 2021. Coming to Thinking Classroom, can the district clarify on the percentage of direct instruction in Thinking Classrooms? How are we making sure that IEP accommodations and 504s are being accommodated when students are assigned to groups of 3? Who's responsible and accountable for ensuring that the accommodations are being met? My last question is in regards to textbooks for mathematics and science. I know that the math supervisor said if the students want to request for textbooks, they can. I personally know that in 6th grade, when we requested, we were basically said there's no textbooks. And then we were given an older version and there are no textbooks for science. So my question is that, I'm not sure how can a supervisor for math say that textbooks can be requested when no textbooks are available? And how are we going to remediate that? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'd like a motion to, is anybody, nobody else is here. Right, I'd like a motion to close the public session.
So moved.
Second? Okay, so we'll see if we can answer some of the questions. Julie, did you have an answer to perhaps the preliminary budget if we don't have a date due at this point?
You have to vote on the close formally, I think.
I had a motion, right, to. Yeah, okay. Public session. Oh, we don't need to do that? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. No. Okay. So can you answer that question, please, regarding the, Mr. Carey wanted to know about when we would know about the preliminary budget.
We may have some points for discussion next week, but the preliminary budget will be presented hopefully at the March 13th meeting.
Okay. Dr. Greer, there were some questions regarding the building thinking classrooms. Are you able to answer?
Sure, I believe some of the questions were about direct instruction or IEPs following accommodations and modifications. And with all things, building thinking classrooms or anything instructionally, it's always best to talk to the teacher first, right? To try to talk about what the accommodations might look like. Everything that's in the IEPs, our teachers are well aware of the IEPs and 504 plans for each of our students. And to work that way, work with the child study team. If a parent doesn't feel that need is being met individually, that's the best place to begin, is with the teacher and the child study team to be able to ensure that the students are receiving the modifications and accommodations that they need.
Okay, and did you answer the question regarding the textbooks?
Textbooks. So many of our materials are also moving online. One of the things that we did hear from the parent sessions, the small group workshops, was about resources. And so one of the things was working on ensuring that each teacher website page has a place for resources. Some are using Open SciEd, for example, in science, that there's not an exact textbook. So being able to ensure that print materials are available for those that need it as per their IEPs and 504s as well.
Thank you. And with regard to other questions, we'll get back to you on those. Thank you. So let's, moving on to new business. New business? Anybody got anything for new business?
Not necessarily, well, it's back to our discussion on goals. I was just just now talking to Patty, and I would like to figure out a date where we can have that workshop to do a goal session. It will, it'll be a public meeting. She had mentioned that sometimes boards do it on a Saturday morning. It's open to the public, but I would like to make the recommendation that over the next week or so, we can just come up with a date where we can do that sooner rather than later, so that we can all talk about goals. She said she could help facilitate it, I think, which would be great. So I don't know what anyone else is feeling about that, but I would like to recommend that as an action for the board.
I think that's great, Joy.
I like that. I think we should find a date to do that. I think that's definitely something that's,
So
would be good for us to have some
So
guidance.
Dipti, can I work with you to just, we'll figure out a date and
Yeah, let's do that.
coordinate? Okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else got any new business? No. So I would just like to recognize Black History Month, but I also want to mention the president of the town council reached out to me, and he said that they will be doing a flag raising ceremony in honor of Black History Month on Saturday, the 11th of February at 11 o'clock. So if anybody can attend that and we can have some representation, that would be wonderful. So if we can do that, great. February 11th at 11 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, it's a Saturday. All right. And if there is if there's no more new business, I would like a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved. So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned.